Have you ever wanted to avoid an event, person or place because of the sense that it might be scary? We're often told growing up in these situations to face our fears. Now, you might have tried facing your fears at one time or another and found the whole situation overwhelming and unhelpful. This video will help outline the steps you need to take in order to face your fears through the use of graded exposure. The steps outlined in this video should give you the chance to maximize your chances of success. It's normal to want to avoid things that you fear. However, avoidance prevents you from learning that things you fear may not be as dangerous as you might think. Graded exposure usually involves gradually and repeatedly going into feared situations until you feel less anxious. This is not something that's particularly pleasant, but exposure in itself is not dangerous and will not make the fear worse. And if you stick at it, over time, your anxiety will reduce. Heck, you never know, you might even come to enjoy these scary situations. Think of exposure like a ladder. At the top of the ladder is a situation you fear the most. Most people can't just jump to the top of the ladder unless you have really long legs. You may have tried exposure in the past and find that it did not work. Perhaps you may have tried to face something too scary too soon, which can feel overwhelming. Or maybe you didn't get the chance to continually practice the steps enough to help you reduce the anxiety. If you break your fear down into smaller steps, you're much more likely to face your fear successfully. There are several steps in order to create a good, effective exposure plan. Number 1. Set a goal. This may seem obvious, but it's trickier than you might think. Sometimes we can pick quite vague goals, such as feel less anxious. However, this can be difficult to assess because anxiety changes all the time. When making a fear ladder, identify a specific goal, such as going to the cinema with a group of friends, and then list the steps needed to achieve that goal. Number 2. Make a list. Make a list of situations that you fear or have been avoiding for a long time. For example, if you're scared of social situations, your list might include going out with friends, asking for something in a shop, staying at a friend's house, saying hi to someone you don't know, going into town, speaking in class, perhaps suggesting something to your friends that you'd like to do. The list is endless. Step 3. Reorder the list. Once you've made a list, arrange things from what you find least scary to the most scary. You can do this by rating how much you fear each situation, perhaps rating from 0 being no fear to 10 being the scariest it could possibly feel. It may feel like at times that everything on your list is a 9 or a 10, but try and think about situations that make you feel less anxious and start with them. Importantly, if you have lots of different fears, it's probably good to build separate ladders for each of those fears. When beginning to face a fear, start with situations that cause you the least anxiety, and if you can, repeatedly engage in that activity, time after time after time, until you start to feel less anxious doing it. If a situation is one where you have to stay for a longer period of time, such as staying with your friends at lunch, stay in that situation long enough for your anxiety to reduce. Usually this takes between 20 and 30 minutes. Step 4. Don't rush. It's important when you're doing any sort of graded exposure not to rush into trying to get as far as you can as quickly as you can, but to pace yourself. It can be very scary facing things you fear. Be patient and take your time. Remember to go at a pace that you can manage. It's better to practice on a regular basis, ideally daily. Even once you become comfortable with doing something, it's important to keep exposing yourself to it from time to time, just so fears don't creep back in. Number 5. Reward yourself. Perhaps one of the most neglected parts of facing fears is rewarding yourself when you've been brave. Always reward when you've taken a positive step to face your fears. If you follow all of the steps outlined, you'll soon find yourself conquering all your fears on a daily basis. If you found this video useful, check out our other resources on moodcafe.co.uk.